Hi, I'm Maeve. My sister tore my dress and called me brain dead at her wedding, but that's not even the worst part. The worst part was finding out my family had been lying to me, manipulating me for years. I thought they were just being cruel, but now, I'm starting to uncover the shocking truth behind everything. The betrayal runs deeper than I ever imagined. Want to know what happens next? You won't believe it. The night was like something out of a magazine: white drapes, chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds, and a crowd of perfectly dressed people swirling around. The wedding was at a luxurious venue, the kind that makes you feel out of place even before you've stepped foot inside. The heavy scent of flowers filled the air, and I couldn't help but feel like I was suffocating in the extravagance. My heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as I walked in, trying to hold myself together. But inside, a storm raged. Resentment. Frustration. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not in the way I was. As I scanned the sea of guests, I knew my place. I was the little sister. The one who didn't measure up. The one who had somehow faded into the background of every family photo, every major event. And tonight, it was no different. Lydia, my older sister, stood there at the center of the room, glowing like she always did, the star of every family gathering. All eyes were on her, as usual. I couldn't help it. The bitterness gnawed at me. I was invisible. I watched as people smiled, laughed, and exchanged pleasantries. And then, I saw them, my parents, beaming with pride as they mingled with Lydia's new in-laws, the ever-perfect golden child. I was nothing. I was used to it, though. This wasn't new. But tonight, as I stepped into the reception, the grandeur of it all felt like a slap in the face. Why was I even here? To watch her get married, to see her take center stage while I remained a shadow? I pulled my attention away from the crowd and took my seat at the table where I was meant to be, the singles table. As Marian, the maid of honor, led me to my seat, the irony didn't escape me. The back of the room. Near the kitchen doors. I could hear the staff moving around, busy with their work, ignoring me, just as they always had. This wasn't my place. And every part of it felt like a reminder of everything I hadn't achieved. I settled into my seat, my hands clenched in my lap. Marian gave me a weak smile before moving off to join the rest of the wedding party. No one else was really paying attention to me. I was here, sure, but I might as well have been invisible. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, it all seemed like it was happening in another world, one I wasn't a part of. This is it, I thought bitterly. The table of losers. The outcasts. My very own reminder of everything I haven't achieved yet. I felt a twinge in my chest at the thought, but there was nothing I could do. That's just the way things were. As I tried to avoid eye contact with anyone, I noticed my sister at the front of the room, surrounded by people, all of them staring at her with admiration. And for the first time, I didn't want to be there. It hurt. It always hurt. But it was nothing I hadn't felt before. The tension in my chest grew tighter, but I didn't let it show. I couldn't. Not here, not now. As the night wore on, I was called to the dance floor for the bouquet toss. I didn't want to be there. But, of course, I had no choice. The pressure to participate, to be just like the other women in the room, was suffocating. I stood with the other unmarried women, all of them younger, all of them seemingly more put together than I was. Then, Lydia, ever so smug, tossed the bouquet. It sailed through the air, but it wasn't aimed at me. No, it went flying in the opposite direction, landing neatly in the hands of Chloe, a woman who was far younger and far more acceptable in my family's eyes. The laughter that followed stung like acid, burning into my skin. The comments came, one after another. Looks like Maeve will be waiting a little longer. Lydia's voice rang out, loud and mocking. Looks like Hannah will have to wait a little longer. The crowd erupted in laughter. I wanted to scream, to lash out at them for treating me like this, but the words wouldn't come. I just turned and walked back to my seat, the sting of their words still fresh. The weight of their judgment heavy in the air around me. The humiliation was all-encompassing. I felt small. I had tried to tell myself that it didn't matter, that I didn't care what they thought. But I did. I always had. And now, sitting there, at the singles table, I couldn't pretend anymore. But then, just as I was about to slip deeper into the pit of shame, something strange happened. A voice interrupted my thoughts. Act like you're with me. I turned around, startled. There was a man standing there, tall, confident, his presence immediately shifting the energy in the room. He was dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, his eyes locking with mine. He didn't know me, and I certainly didn't know him. "Who are you?" I found myself asking, confused. He smiled, a calm, reassuring smile that seemed out of place in this chaotic moment. "Just act like you're with me." I blinked. And for the first time that night, I wasn't invisible. His presence, his quiet confidence, gave me something I hadn't felt all evening, a sense of relief. I wasn't alone anymore. He smoothly sat next to me, casually leaning in as if nothing was amiss. We started talking. I could feel the shift. The tension in my chest loosened, and for the first time all evening, I felt like I mattered. He was talking to me, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He wasn't looking down on me. Who was this man? And why did it feel like he had come to rescue me from my misery? He introduced himself as Richard's cousin, William, visiting from Boston. But more than that, his presence at my table was like a light shining through the darkness. He had taken control of the situation in an effortless, subtle way. Lydia watched from a distance, her eyes narrowing with curiosity as she noticed the shift. I could tell that she didn't like it. But this was my moment. I wasn't the invisible little sister anymore. As William continued to talk with me, I realized something. I was finally being seen. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like someone finally saw me for who I was. And as I looked across the room, at Lydia, who was now eyeing us with irritation, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I wasn't the outcast anymore. I wasn't the overlooked sibling. I was someone else now. I sat at my table, feeling the weight of the evening pressing down on me. The laughter, the chatter, the toasts, it all blurred into a distant hum as I stared at my untouched glass of wine. My sister's wedding had been a showcase of everything I wasn't: successful, married, loved. As the music played, my mind raced with thoughts of escaping. The humiliation from the bouquet toss still stung, and I couldn't help but think it might be best to leave. But where would I go? This was my family, my sister's night. I was supposed to be happy for her. I glanced around the room, my eyes lingering on Lydia, who stood in the center of attention, surrounded by everyone admiring her. A feeling of resentment bubbled up inside me. Why had I even come? Maybe it was time to slip away quietly, unnoticed, and get out before I fell any further into the abyss. But just as I was gathering my things, a calm voice interrupted my thoughts. "Act like you're with me." I looked up, startled, to find a man standing behind me. Tall, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, his expression exuded confidence. His voice, firm but smooth, cut through the noise of the room. "Who are you?" I asked, my mind scrambling to process what was happening. He smiled, a slight curve of his lips, and extended his hand. "William, I'm Richard's cousin from Boston." My mind raced. Who was this guy? Why would he want to help me? But there was something about his demeanor, something so assured, that immediately made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't a part of this charade, but he was standing here, offering me something that felt like an escape. "Act like you're with me," he repeated. "Let's get you out of this situation." I didn't know why, but I nodded, the weight of the evening lifting a little. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel completely lost. He smoothly took the seat next to me, and with that simple gesture, it was like the atmosphere around us shifted. The guests who had been ignoring me now glanced in our direction, their curiosity piqued by the new dynamic at my table. For once, I wasn't the odd one out. The subtle shift was like a breath of fresh air. I found myself relaxing into my seat, surprised by how easy the conversation flowed between us. He asked about my life, but not in the patronizing way my family did. He didn't make me feel small. There was something about him that made me feel seen. As we talked, I noticed the guests at the table slowly warming up to me. The uncomfortable glances, the whispers, they had stopped. I felt like a real person again, not just the overlooked, ignored sister. "Why are you doing this?" I asked him quietly, my voice a little shaky. "You don't even know me." William leaned back in his chair, a small smile on his face. "Sometimes, a little kindness is all we need to change the whole night." His eyes twinkled slightly, like he knew something I didn't. "Besides, I've heard a lot about you." My curiosity piqued, I sat up straighter. What have you heard? He shrugged casually, his voice smooth. Richard talks about you. He says you've got a good head on your shoulders, but you need to stand up for yourself more. Sounds like someone's been holding you back. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. How much did he really know about my family? About the years of being overshadowed by Lydia? It was like he could see right through the facade my family put up. For a moment, I felt like I could finally breathe, that the suffocating grip of my family's expectations was loosening. I tried to smile, but it felt strange. You're right about that. I don't know how long I can keep pretending that it's okay. William's eyes softened. You don't have to. Not anymore. It's time to stop being the invisible one. His words echoed in my head, rattling something deep inside me. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe I didn't have to let Lydia and the rest of my family dictate my every move. The conversation shifted, and as I laughed at something he said, I noticed a subtle change in the room. Guests who had been so focused on Lydia and her perfect little world were now turning their attention toward me. I was no longer the invisible sister sitting in the back corner, hiding in the shadows. Lydia was across the room now, and I could see the irritation on her face as she watched William and me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the underdog. I felt like someone had finally seen me. I glanced at William, who was still effortlessly charming everyone around him, and felt a flicker of something. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was the beginning of something different. As Lydia made her way over to us, I could see her mask of politeness slipping. The smile on her face faltered as she approached, her eyes narrowing. Well, Lydia said, her tone forced sweet. I didn't know you and William were so close, Maeve. Is this a new thing for you? I felt my chest tighten, the old insecurities creeping back. But William wasn't rattled. He smiled, smooth and confident. We've reconnected. Isn't it nice to meet new people at family events? Lydia's eyes flickered with surprise, but she didn't back down. How interesting, she said, the faintest edge in her voice. I didn't realize you were close to Richard's family. Funny how things work out, huh? William said with a shrug, his eyes locking onto Lydia's with an unspoken challenge. The tension in the air thickened, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a bystander. I was part of this moment. And I wasn't going to shrink back into the background anymore. William was my ally, and for once, I didn't have to hide. The night wore on, but something inside me was shifting. The conversations, the laughter, they didn't feel so distant anymore. The more I talked to William, the more I realized that I wasn't as invisible as I'd always thought. Maybe it was time to start living for myself. Why are you helping me? I asked again, my voice soft, almost vulnerable. William's eyes softened. Because sometimes you need someone to remind you that you're worth something. And you deserve to be seen. That was all it took. His words hit me harder than any judgment or ridicule from my family. Maybe this was the beginning of something different. Maybe I didn't have to stay in the shadow of my sister's perfection. As the night continued, I found myself standing taller, breathing a little easier. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the background player in my family's story. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally starting to see myself. I woke up to the soft morning light creeping through the blinds of my apartment, but the weight of the previous night lingered like a shadow. The wedding, the humiliation, and then William's unexpected presence had stirred something in me that I couldn't shake. It felt like I was at a crossroads, but I still wasn't sure which direction to go. The phone buzzed beside me, breaking the silence. It was a call from my mother, Diane. I hesitated before answering, knowing that she would be the bearer of her usual judgments. Maeve, honey, you okay? Her voice was sweet, but I could hear the underlying tension. I'm sure it was all just a misunderstanding last night. You know how Lydia is. She's just trying to be funny. You need to lighten up. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar sting of being reduced to the family's joke. My mother never failed to trivialize my feelings, brushing off everything with a soft chuckle. But today, it didn't hurt as much as it usually did. There was anger, sure, but also something else, empowerment. I wasn't going to let this define me anymore. They think I'm the same weak sister. Well, not anymore, I thought to myself. I didn't owe anyone an explanation for my feelings, not anymore. But then, Diane added a line that made my stomach churn. Lydia asked me to check on you. She's worried you're upset over last night. The weight of that hit me harder than anything else she said. Lydia, the one who always had everything figured out, the one who couldn't bear the thought of being overshadowed. My family still saw me as the problem child, the one who didn't live up to their expectations. But I was done with that. I was done being the family's punching bag. I couldn't let it continue any longer. After the call ended, I took a deep breath. I wasn't just going to sit back and let things happen to me anymore. It was time to make a change. The next step was clear. I had to confront Lydia. I drove to my family's house, the same house I'd spent so many years avoiding, filled with memories of being ignored, ridiculed, and placed second to my sister. The familiar house felt suffocating now. I parked outside and took one last look at the familiar structure. This was it, no turning back. When I walked inside, Lydia was already there, sitting comfortably in the living room, her perfect posture and casual smile an almost too obvious reminder of how different we were. She looked at me as though she expected me to apologize for last night, as though I was the one who had done something wrong. Before I could even sit down, she spoke in that tone that always made my blood boil. "Maeve, you really need to learn to take a joke. You looked like a deer in the headlights out there. Honestly, it wasn't that bad." My heart began to race. The old feeling of inadequacy started to creep in, but I shoved it down. "Not this time. I'm done being humiliated by you, Lydia," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being the joke. I'm done being the family's outcast." Her expression faltered, just for a second. But she quickly recovered, flashing that perfect smile again, her eyes narrowing slightly as if sizing me up. "What are you talking about? It was all in good fun. Why do you always have to make things so dramatic?" I felt the frustration building inside me, but I stood my ground. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm just tired of being treated like I don't matter. I matter, too." Lydia's face tightened. She stood up, trying to regain control of the situation, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She could tell that I wasn't backing down. "You know," Lydia said, her voice shifting slightly, "this really isn't the time, Maeve. With Dad's health, don't make things harder than they already are." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My father's health was a sensitive topic, and Lydia knew it. She was using guilt again, just like she always had. I could feel the old pull, the instinct to shrink back, but I refused. I couldn't let her win this time. "No, Lydia. It's always about Dad, or what people think, or what's convenient for you. I've been walking on eggshells my entire life to keep the peace. But not anymore." My voice grew louder, steady with conviction. "You don't get to use Dad as a shield to silence me anymore. I have a voice, and I'm going to use it." Lydia's face turned red, her smile faltering completely now. The control she had over me, over this family, was slipping, and I could feel the power shift in that room. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to speak up. I took a deep breath, pushing past the rush of emotions. "I'm not the same person I was, Lydia. You've always been the golden child. But I'm tired of playing your sidekick. I'm tired of being invisible." I turned and left the living room, leaving Lydia standing there in stunned silence. The feeling of power, of standing up for myself, felt strange and liberating all at once. That night, I sat in my apartment, reflecting on everything that had just happened. I couldn't believe I had actually said those things to Lydia. It wasn't just about standing up to her, it was about standing up to the entire family. I had always been their scapegoat, but that was going to change. The phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was William. I picked it up, my heart beating faster than I expected. "Hey," his voice was warm, reassuring. "How's it going? I've been thinking about you. How are you holding up after last night?" I let out a breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over me just hearing his voice. "I'm okay," I said, finally allowing myself to admit it. "I did it. I stood up to them." William chuckled softly. "I knew you could. You've got more strength than you realize." His words were like a balm to my wounded soul. For the first time in a long time, I felt validated, not by my family's approval, but by my own courage. "I've been living for everyone else," I said, my voice steady. "But it's time I start living for me." That night, as I lay in bed, the weight of everything that had happened settled in. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was ready to face it. And it all started with me. The air felt thick with tension as I stepped into the family's mansion, the place that had been the backdrop for so many moments of discomfort in my life. It was evening, and the house, despite its grandeur, felt like a cage. A formal family dinner, supposedly meant to heal the wounds of the previous confrontation, was about to unfold, but I knew it was just a charade. The weight of what was at stake tonight hung heavily on my shoulders. I wasn't just walking into this dinner to play the role they expected me to. I was determined to finally uncover the truths that had been hidden for years. I greeted my parents with forced pleasantries, keeping my emotions in check. But I couldn't ignore the coldness from my father, Richard, and the smug look that Lydia wore, like she had already won whatever battle we were meant to have tonight. Her perfect smile, her perfectly poised posture, it was all too much. I tried to hold it together, but the sharp glances exchanged between my family members were hard to ignore. They were waiting for me to break, to go back to the weak, invisible sister they always expected me to be. But tonight, I wasn't that Maeve anymore. I took a seat at the dinner table, the grand, shiny surface reflecting the fractured dynamics of the family that sat around it. Every one of them held a piece of power, some overt, like Lydia's obvious control over the family, and some hidden, like Richard's quiet complicity in all of it. The dinner started, and everyone tried to pretend like nothing had changed. The polite clinking of silverware filled the silence, but the tension was palpable. As I sat there, I couldn't help but notice Richard's silence. He avoided eye contact with me. That wasn't normal. Richard, the patriarch, was the last person who should have been avoiding confrontation. But I could feel it, something was off. I glanced at Lydia, who caught my eye and shot me a look that was both smug and defensive. She wasn't ready for the truth to come out, but it would. The conversation turned, as expected, to the events of the wedding. Lydia couldn't resist bringing it up, of course. She had to have the last word, make sure the family knew that I had been the one to spoil the evening. You know, Maeve, maybe you just need to learn to take a joke, she said with a sweet but sharp tone, like she was addressing a child. We were just having a little fun, but you always overreact. The room went quiet, waiting for my response. For a moment, I was back in that familiar place, the one where I would have let her walk all over me. But not tonight. I straightened up in my chair, took a deep breath, and spoke, my voice steady but filled with years of suppressed emotion. No, Lydia, I'm done being the family's scapegoat. I'm done letting you make me feel small. The joke's not on me anymore. It's on you. Her face hardened, but she was momentarily speechless. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, trying to figure out how to regain control of the conversation. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Diane, my mother, jumped in, as she always did, to defend Lydia. Oh, honey, don't be so sensitive. We all know Lydia's just teasing. You know how she is. But her words felt empty. They always did. We're family. It's all in good fun, Maeve. No, Mom, I said, cutting her off. It's not in good fun. It's been years of this. You've let Lydia do whatever she wants while I've been left to clean up the mess, every single time. The words came out more forcefully than I expected, but I didn't back down. You've never stood up for me. You've never cared enough to stop her. The silence in the room thickened. Richard, my father, looked up from his plate. His expression was one of annoyance, like I was disturbing his peace. I could feel my anger boiling up, but I was determined to keep my composure. This was my moment. Richard's voice broke the silence, but his words made my heart sink. Maeve, you don't understand. This is how things work in this family. We've always handled things this way. I've always handled things this way. I stared at him, my hands gripping the edge of the table. So you've always known, haven't you? You've always known about Lydia and how she manipulates everything, and you just let it happen. You never cared enough to stop her, did you? Richard's face reddened, and for the first time in my life, I saw him falter. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out at first. When he finally spoke, his words were reluctant, like they were forced out of him. I've been busy, Maeve. Too busy to notice what was going on. I thought it would work itself out. Really? I asked, my voice low and cold. You thought it would work itself out? Well, it hasn't. You've let Lydia run this family, and all this time, I've been the one paying for it. Diane shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but didn't say a word. This was what it always came down to: my mother's silence, my father's indifference, and Lydia's manipulation. The truth was staring us all in the face, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to acknowledge it. Lydia tried to regain control. "You're being dramatic, Maeve," she said, but there was no conviction behind her words. "You know the family has to stick together, especially now." "Dad's health." I interrupted her, my voice louder now. "No, Lydia. You've been hiding behind Dad's health, behind family obligations, your perfect little life. But I'm done being the one who always gets pushed aside. I'm done playing the role you've created for me." Lydia's face twisted with anger, but I didn't flinch. This time, I wasn't going to let her win. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. My family watched in stunned silence. "I'm done asking for permission," I said, the words finally coming out with all the power I had been holding back for years. "I'm going to live my life the way I want to. Whether you accept it or not." The room was completely still, and for the first time in my life, I felt a sense of relief. I wasn't the family's punching bag anymore. I wasn't going to let their lies control me any longer. I turned and walked toward the door, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the room. Before I reached the door, Lydia called out to me. "You'll regret this, you know," she said, her voice dripping with venom. I didn't look back. I opened the door, stepped outside, and closed it firmly behind me. And in that moment, as the cool night air hit my face, I realized something: I was free. The weight of the decision I made the night before pressed down on me like an anchor. Sitting in my small apartment the next morning, I felt the quiet space around me, the stillness of the room, both soothing and suffocating. For the first time in years, I had spoken out. I had stood up to my family, to Lydia, but now the silence felt deafening. The echo of my father's words, his dismissive attitude, still lingered in my mind. I replayed the dinner over and over in my head, wondering if I had made the right choice. Had I gone too far? Was it worth it? I knew I had to leave, but the reality of walking away from everything I had known was more complicated than I'd ever imagined. The anger I had felt in the moment was slowly being replaced by doubt. "Maeve, you've taken a stand, but at what cost?" The question gnawed at me. I stared at my phone, wondering if any messages had come in, hoping for something to break the stillness. Then, my phone buzzed. A message from Lydia. My heart skipped a beat. I read it with a tight grip on the phone. "We need to talk. Something's coming. It's not over." What the hell did that mean? The text was cryptic, almost as if she knew what was coming before I did. Was it another one of her manipulative games, or was something bigger happening? I couldn't tell, but it had me on edge. I stared at the screen, contemplating. Was I going to let her continue to control the narrative? Was I going to play her game? Or would I finally stand up for myself and confront whatever lies she was spinning this time? The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. I walked to the door, hesitant. When I opened it, there stood a man in a suit, holding a briefcase. He introduced himself as a lawyer from the family's firm. He had a stern look, and his eyes didn't meet mine directly as he handed me a folder. "Maeve O'Connor?" he asked. "Yes. What's this about?" "It's from your sister, Lydia. She's taken legal action against you. Claims you've been involved in a financial scheme to defraud the family business." My blood ran cold. I couldn't process the words at first. This wasn't happening. Lydia was actually going to try to ruin me, and she had the nerve to use the family's trust fund as her weapon. I stared at the papers, feeling the rush of heat rise to my face. "You're telling me that my sister, my own sister, has just filed charges against me?" The lawyer nodded, his expression impassive. "She's accusing you of misappropriating funds." I looked at the documents again. The evidence she had was fabricated, a complete lie. My mind raced. How was this possible? How had she managed to pull this off? My body trembled with anger. Betrayal had always been in her blood, but this was a new low. "Maeve, you won't let her get away with this." I clenched my fists, the fire of determination igniting in my chest. The nerve. She was trying to make me the villain in her story. She thought she could manipulate everyone and control me like she always had. "Lydia will stop at nothing to destroy me," I muttered under my breath. "But she doesn't know who she's messing with." The lawyer handed me his card and left without another word, leaving me standing in the doorway, the weight of the betrayal sinking in deeper. I walked back to the table and slammed the papers down in front of me. I needed a plan. I needed to fight back. It was time to stop being passive. I wasn't going to let Lydia tear me down anymore. I wouldn't let her manipulate me into believing I was the problem. This time, I was going to expose her. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I hadn't dialed in years. A former colleague from my legal days, someone I trusted, someone who owed me a favor. "I need help," I said when he picked up. "I need everything you've got on Lydia and the family finances." As I hung up the phone, the adrenaline surged through my veins. For the first time, I was taking control. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. "Maeve, you've been silenced for too long. This ends now." Later that night, I pulled out old files, scanning through them for any discrepancies. I dug through the family's financial records, using every ounce of legal knowledge I had gained over the years. The more I searched, the clearer it became. There were lies, lots of them. But there was one thing that stood out, a piece of evidence so powerful that it could destroy Lydia's credibility once and for all. But using it would come at a cost. If I used this evidence, I would burn the last bridge with my family. I would be severing all ties with them for good. The decision was a hard one. The temptation to expose Lydia was strong, but I knew the fallout would be massive. I would be alone, but at least I would have my dignity. As I sat in the quiet of my apartment, I took a deep breath. "I'm done asking for permission," I whispered to myself. "It's my turn now." The next day, I arranged to meet Lydia. She wouldn't see it coming. The cafe was busy, the hum of conversation and clinking cups filling the air. I walked in, feeling the familiar rush of anger. I spotted Lydia sitting at a corner table, her perfect posture, her fake smile. She had no idea what was coming. I sat down across from her, the weight of the papers I held pressing down on me. "Lydia," I said, my voice steady, "I know everything." She raised an eyebrow, playing it cool. "What are you talking about? You've been manipulating everyone, trying to destroy me. But I'm done being your punching bag." I pulled out the evidence I had uncovered, laying it on the table. Lydia's face shifted for a split second, but she quickly regained composure. "You think you can intimidate me with a few papers?" she scoffed. "Don't play dumb," I said, my calm voice cutting through her act. "I know what you've done. And I'm not going to let you get away with it." Lydia's smile faltered, and she leaned back in her chair. "You're out of your depth, Maeve. You have no idea what you're up against." But I could see it in her eyes. The uncertainty, the fear. She had underestimated me for far too long. "You've tried to break me, Lydia. But you've only made me stronger." The silence between us grew thick as I watched her face twist with anger. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Finally, she spoke. "Fine, Maeve. You want to play this game? Let's play." Her composure cracked, and for a brief moment, I saw the real Lydia, the one who was scared. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt the weight of the confrontation on my shoulders. But I knew this was just the beginning. The battle was far from over. I had made my first move. And I wasn't going to stop until the truth was out. As I walked away, I knew this was only the beginning of the war. And I was ready. The morning after the dinner was a blur. The intensity of the confrontation with Lydia still hung in the air like smoke, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something bigger than just the lies and manipulations I had already uncovered. Sitting in my small apartment, I took a deep breath, trying to settle my nerves. My hands shook as I dialed the phone to reach a few trusted allies. It was time to step up. Time to take control. I called my former colleague, the one who had always been a steady ally, the one who could help me navigate the legal mess Lydia was pulling me into. After a few rings, he answered, his voice low and urgent. "I need everything you can find on Lydia. Anything. Financial records, business dealings. I don't care how far back it goes. Maeve, I don't know what's going on, but if it's as bad as you say, I'll get you what you need." I didn't have time for pleasantries. The next call I made was to a distant cousin, someone who had always seemed to keep his distance from the drama. But now, he could be the key to a piece of the puzzle I hadn't yet uncovered. As I paced the room, I started sorting through the financial documents. There was a pattern, inconsistencies, gaps where Lydia had covered her tracks. But it was in those gaps that the truth hid, and it was there I was going to find the smoking gun. Every paper I sifted through felt like another step away from the person I had been. Someone defined by family expectations, by Lydia's control. Now, I was becoming the person who would take those chains and break them. It's not just about revenge, I murmured to myself as I flipped through another pile of documents. It's about taking back my life and exposing the truth. I won't let her win. The phone buzzed, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from an unknown number. You're not the only one who knows what's going on. Lydia's keeping something bigger from you, something with the business. My pulse quickened. This was it, the confirmation that there was something far darker at play. I immediately started making plans to uncover it all, to turn her manipulation back on her. Hours later, I sat across from Lydia at an upscale restaurant, an unexpected venue for a confrontation, but I had agreed to meet her. She had sent me an invitation, a little too eager to talk things out. Lydia was always the picture of composure, her smile tight, her eyes gleaming with the need to control the conversation. But I wasn't going to play her game this time. I had the upper hand. We exchanged pleasantries as the waiter brought us our drinks. I sat, calmly, watching her. I knew she expected me to crumble under her charm, under her manipulation, but this time, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Lydia started with the usual, we should talk about your behavior at the dinner. It's not like you, Maeve. You should lighten up. I let her talk. Let her dig her own hole. Then, I started pulling out the evidence I had gathered. Slowly, methodically, I laid it out, one piece at a time. Financial discrepancies, business dealings that didn't add up, shady transactions that Lydia had orchestrated behind the scenes. Each document I placed on the table made her sit straighter, her smile faltering bit by bit. Her voice wavered as she tried to keep control, but it was clear she was losing her grip. What are you trying to do, Maeve? This isn't the way to handle family business. I didn't blink. You've been lying to everyone for years. You've used this family to get what you want, and I'm done being your pawn. Lydia's face turned pale, her perfect facade cracking. She leaned forward, trying to smooth over her slip. Look, I don't know what you're trying to do here, but you need to understand that I have a plan. I'm offering you a way out, join me. Help me keep this quiet, and you'll get what you deserve. A place in the business, power. All of it. You just need to stand down. Her offer was meant to control me, to pull me back into the fold. But I saw right through it. This wasn't about power, it was about Lydia keeping everything she had worked for. And I wasn't going to play her game. No deal, Lydia, I said coolly. I'm not interested in playing by your rules anymore. You can't buy my silence. Not anymore. The tension in the room was palpable as Lydia's composure continued to slip. Her eyes darted around the restaurant, looking for an escape from the trap I had set. She took a breath, trying to steady herself, but it was too late. The lies were out in the open now. There was no taking them back. She sat back, deflating. You really think you can destroy me? I don't need to destroy you, I replied, my voice calm but unwavering. You're already doing it yourself. The waiter came over to clear our plates, his presence a reminder that we were still in public, still in a place of civility. But between the two of us, the air had thickened with unspoken promises, with the knowledge that this fight had only just begun. As I left the restaurant, my phone buzzed again, another message from Lydia. I'm not done with you, Maeve. You'll regret this. I read the message once, then deleted it. Her threats didn't faze me anymore. In fact, they only fueled my resolve. Later that night, as I sat in my apartment, preparing to take the next steps, my phone rang again. It was my family, demanding that I come forward with everything I had. They wanted answers, but I wasn't ready to expose everything yet. The time wasn't right. I had the evidence now. But what I didn't have was their support. Maeve, you've won this round, but the war is far from over. I stared at the phone, contemplating what to do next. This wasn't just about Lydia anymore. It was about standing up for what I believed in. And whatever came next, I was ready. But just as I was about to make my next move, the phone rang again. This time, it was Lydia. Her voice, breathless, begged me. Maeve, wait. You don't understand. We can fix this. Please, just give me one last chance. I hesitated. My hands trembled as I held the phone. But deep down, I knew, I couldn't go back. The truth had to come out. It was the only way to finally end this battle. As I set the phone down, I realized that everything I had worked for was now on the line. The family, the truth, the lies, everything was about to come to a head. And for the first time, I felt ready to face whatever came next. I sat at my desk, the weight of the family meeting still pressing down on me. The satisfaction of presenting the evidence, the brief moment of triumph, it all felt so fleeting now. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, a million thoughts racing through my head. How could everything feel so out of my control, despite what I had exposed? Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was from Lydia. A knot tightened in my stomach. I already knew this was not going to be good news. The message popped up. "You've made a fool of yourself. I'm going public with my side of the story. Enjoy the fallout." I felt a rush of shock and anger flood through me. Of all the low blows Lydia could have struck, this one was the most venomous. She was turning the entire family against me, again. I quickly checked social media. There it was, an orchestrated campaign, with carefully timed posts framing me as the villain. Lydia's version of events, spun with just enough truth to make her appear the victim. The backlash was immediate. Comments flooded in, calling me manipulative, a liar, everything I had worked so hard to avoid. She's played me all along, I thought bitterly. How could I not see this coming? The truth didn't matter anymore. What mattered was perception, and Lydia had that locked down. As the reality of what she had done set in, a feeling of helplessness washed over me. I had been prepared to fight for my freedom, but this wasn't just a battle anymore. This was war. But I wasn't going to back down. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was from a family member I had trusted. Someone who had seemed to be on my side. But as the message unfolded, the truth was clear. They had sided with Lydia. Another ally lost. She's playing this game like a chess master, I realized. But I'm not going to be her pawn anymore. I pushed myself away from the desk, my mind shifting gears. I needed a counter-strategy, and I needed it fast. The public battle would be harder than I had anticipated, but I couldn't let this lie stand. I called my lawyer. The plan was simple. We would go on the offensive. I would expose everything Lydia had done, everything I had uncovered. By the time we met at the cafe later that afternoon, I was ready. My lawyer was prepared to fight with me, not just for me. We discussed the next steps. I would gather a coalition of trusted family members and friends who could testify to Lydia's true character. It would be a long fight, but I knew I couldn't back down. We began making plans, emails, recorded conversations, everything I had that could show the truth. "You've got the family's ear, Maeve, but you've got the truth on your side," my lawyer said, eyes narrowing with resolve. I nodded. I may not win them all, but I'll win this fight, I thought. I will expose her. Hours later, the confrontation with Lydia would finally take place, at the family home. The tension had been building for days, and now it was all coming to a head. This would be the final showdown, where everything would either fall into place or fall apart. I walked into the room, evidence in hand, ready to confront Lydia in front of the family. The familiar faces were lined up, their eyes flickering nervously between Lydia and me. I could feel their judgment, but this time, it didn't faze me. I had nothing to lose. I wasn't asking for their approval anymore. Lydia tried to keep the conversation calm at first, but I wasn't here for calm. I dropped the evidence onto the table. Each paper, each email, each shred of truth I had gathered over the past days and weeks hit the table with a finality I hadn't felt before. "Do you think this will change anything?" Lydia sneered. "You can't just throw accusations at me. People will believe me, not you." I didn't flinch. "You've been lying to everyone for years, Lydia. I'm done pretending I don't see it." Family members began to argue, some speaking up for me, others rallying behind Lydia. The atmosphere shifted rapidly from tense silence to full-blown chaos. The family was divided, and secrets were spilling out faster than I could have ever anticipated. Lydia's calm exterior cracked. She tried to deny everything, but the weight of the evidence was too much. The lies she had spun for years were unraveling right in front of her. "I never thought you'd do this, Maeve. You're just trying to destroy everything," she hissed, fury in her voice. But I wasn't the one destroying things. She had done that all on her own. I leaned in, my voice steady but sharp. No, Lydia, you've been destroying everything for years. This is just the truth catching up with you. The family members who had once sided with Lydia now began to question her motives. Her charm was slipping, but just as I thought we were making progress, a new twist hit. The public's response to the evidence was skeptical. Some believed me, but many questioned the timing of my revelations, seeing it as a personal vendetta rather than an honest attempt at exposing the truth. The scandal was becoming more complex, and the truth seemed less certain. This wasn't supposed to happen, I thought, frustration rising within me. I was supposed to expose the lies, and they were supposed to see it. But Lydia wasn't finished. She fought back with a vengeance, but now, she was losing her grip. Later that evening, I found myself back at the cafe where my lawyer and I had first discussed our next steps. The weight of everything hit me then, the fight, the chaos, the emotional toll it had taken on me. The family confrontation had broken me in ways I hadn't expected. My mind was racing, but something inside me clicked. I've spent too long trying to make them see me, I whispered to myself. Now, it's time to see myself for who I truly am. The weight of the fight, the endless battle for validation, the years of manipulation, it was all too much. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't need their approval. I needed to find my own path. A path where I wasn't defined by their expectations. I packed up my things in my apartment that night, preparing to move on. But just as I was about to leave, a message came through on my phone. It was Lydia. Maeve, I know things are bad between us, but I'm offering you one last chance. Let's work this out. We can fix everything. I stared at the message, torn. Part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me wanted to fix everything, to end the battle, to just walk away from the wreckage. But then I realized something. This was never going to be fixed. I deleted the message. The past was done. For the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of the future in my hands. What happens when the past refuses to stay behind? When it follows you into the future? The family estate felt different today, like a battleground on the verge of collapse. It was the day of the final confrontation, the moment where everything I had fought for would either fall into place or shatter completely. The tension was so thick, you could feel it in the air. My heart raced in my chest as I walked into the living room, my mind running through every possible scenario. This could be my last chance to expose Lydia for who she really was, to finally break free from the hold she'd had on me for so long. As family members trickled in, I saw their faces. Some were skeptical, others were still loyal to Lydia. But now, they would all have to face the truth. Lydia and I exchanged brief, icy glances. This wasn't just about us anymore. This was about everything I had worked for, the freedom I had clawed my way toward. This was the endgame. I had to win. But just when I thought I had control, the ground shifted beneath my feet. My phone buzzed. Another revelation, this one more devastating than I could have imagined. I had thought I was prepared, but Lydia had outsmarted me once again. The family's financial status was worse than I thought. Much worse. She had been hiding the truth about their wealth, manipulating everyone into believing things were fine, while covering up years of financial instability. She had been playing a much bigger game than I had realized. I felt my grip on the situation slipping. This wasn't just a fight for my freedom anymore. This was a battle for the truth itself. The room quieted as I stood, facing the family, ready to unveil everything I had uncovered. The evidence, the emails, the texts, the testimonies, was all laid out before me, my final play. This was my chance to expose Lydia for what she truly was, a master manipulator. I've had enough, I began, my voice steady but firm. For years, you've all been deceived. Lydia has been manipulating every one of you. And I'm done pretending I don't see it. I began to explain the years of deceit, detailing the lies, the manipulation, and the control Lydia had over the family. But just as I thought the truth would set me free, a bombshell dropped. One of my closest allies, someone I had trusted implicitly, stood up, defending Lydia's version of events. They spoke with a calm, calculated confidence, backing up Lydia's lies. The shock hit me like a punch to the stomach. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. How could this person, someone who had been in my corner, betray me like this? I couldn't process it at first. The betrayal was too much. I had thought I was surrounded by people who cared, who would fight alongside me, but now I realized I had been blind. How could I have been so blind? I whispered, my voice cracking as I tried to hold back the tears. The family, my family, wasn't what I thought it was. The unity I had once hoped for had been shattered, fractured beyond repair by years of manipulation and lies. But the game wasn't over. I wouldn't let it be. I stood tall, even as the weight of the betrayal crushed me. As I gathered my thoughts, I recalled the truth I had uncovered, Lydia's financial lies. She had been hiding massive debts, manipulating everyone, and covering it up by weaving a web of deceit around the family. The truth was bigger than just our family. It reached into the very heart of the business that had been the foundation of everything they believed in. My revelation, however, didn't have the effect I had expected. The family seemed divided. Some questioned Lydia, but others clung to her charm and influence. Even with the truth laid bare, many seemed reluctant to face it. The gathering was turning into a spectacle. The very foundation of our family was crumbling before our eyes. I stepped away from the chaos, retreating to the garden behind the estate. I needed a moment to breathe, to think. I had been fighting for so long, trying to prove something to people who didn't care to listen, who couldn't see the truth even if it was right in front of them. As I sat there, something shifted inside me. The past had been controlling me for far too long. I had fought for the wrong reasons, seeking approval, seeking validation from people who would never give it to me. It was time to let go. I'm not a victim. I am not my past, I whispered to myself. I am who I choose to be, and I'm done fighting for them. The realization hit me like a wave. I had spent so much time trying to fix things, to make people see me. But now, I knew what I had to do. I had to walk away from this toxic cycle. I didn't need their approval. I needed peace. I stood up, a newfound clarity in my heart. As I turned to leave the garden, I found a letter. It was from my late mother, hidden away in a drawer. Her handwriting, her words, it all felt so real. She had written to me years ago, urging me to trust my instincts, to live my life without fear. Her words were the closure I had been seeking. I wasn't alone. I had the strength to do what was right for me. Returning to the estate, I knew what I had to do. It was time for the final confrontation. The family gathered again in the sitting room, where I had spent so many years of my life, trying to fit in, trying to be accepted. But now, I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't there to win their love. I was there to stand firm in my truth, no matter what happened next. Lydia tried one last time to manipulate the situation, offering me a deal, a way out, but it was too late. The power she once held over me was gone. I'm done with this, I said calmly. I'm walking away. I don't need this family's approval anymore. I don't need any of it. I'm choosing my own happiness. I turned and walked away from the table, leaving them all behind. I knew I wasn't just walking away from the family, I was walking into my future, where I could finally be myself, free from their manipulation. The finality of the decision felt both liberating and terrifying. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to find out. As I packed my belongings in my apartment, ready to leave everything behind, a message came through. It was from one of the family members, an olive branch, a potential path to reconciliation. I stared at the screen, torn. Should I go back and try to heal the fractured relationship, or was it time to leave the past behind for good? I closed the door behind me, uncertain of what the future held, but confident that it was my door to open. The morning after the final confrontation, I stood in the middle of my empty apartment. Everything was packed, every corner stripped of the life I had tried so hard to maintain. My family, my past, was now behind me, and though the silence in the room was deafening, there was something liberating about it. I hadn't realized how heavy the burden had been until I let it go. The manipulation, the betrayals, the years spent trying to gain approval, none of it defined me anymore. All the struggles, the fights, the hurt. I had worked through it all, and now, the only thing left was peace. Looking at my suitcase, I began deciding what to keep from my past. Some things, memories mostly, stayed. The rest, the baggage, the toxic remnants, those went into the past where they belonged. I was closing the door on that chapter, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. The past doesn't define me anymore. I've learned what I need to, and now, I walk away free. Just as I was preparing to leave, a letter slid under the door. I wasn't expecting anything, especially not from her. My mother. It had been years since I had heard her voice, and yet, in this quiet moment, there it was, her handwriting. I tore it open, my hands trembling, and read her words. It was simple, but powerful. Live without fear, Maeve. Trust yourself, always. The words broke through my armor. She had always wanted peace for me. She had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. The letter was the final piece of closure I needed. It sealed my decision to move on. With that, I knew I was not only walking away from my family, but I was also walking towards something greater. I spent the next few hours setting up my new apartment, smaller but full of potential. There was something about this place, my space, that felt right. I decorated with things that made me happy, pieces of me that had long been buried under years of manipulation. This was my sanctuary, and as I looked around, I knew it was where I could finally heal. As the afternoon light streamed in through the windows, I felt a deep sense of calm settle over me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like myself. The weight of my past, the constant demands for validation, the years of being stuck in a toxic family dynamic, it was all gone. I took out my phone, scrolling through contacts, and found an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. The conversation was easy, like no time had passed. We laughed, shared stories, and for a moment, I realized just how much I had missed out on while being trapped in that dysfunctional world. This was the real world, the one I was now free to build on my own terms. As I hung up, a text popped up, unexpected and jarring. It was a job offer. Not just any job, a chance at something I had always wanted. A company I had admired for years had reached out, offering me a position. My heart raced. This wasn't just a job. This was a fresh start. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. This wasn't just a career opportunity, it was a chance to step into the life I had always dreamed of, without the shadow of my past hanging over me. But just as I was absorbing this new hope, my phone rang again. It was a family member, calling to make peace, offering an olive branch. The thought of reconciling, of healing the wounds that had been festering for so long, was tempting. A small part of me still longed for the family I once knew. I felt the pull, the old familiar ache for things to be right again, but I knew better now. I had worked too hard to find peace to let it all slip away again. The past had its hold on me for too long, but I was done with it. I had to protect my newfound freedom. The phone buzzed again. I could hear my mother's voice echo in my head, "Trust yourself, Maeve." I knew what I had to do. I decided to meet with the family member who had reached out. But this time, I would do it on my terms. I wouldn't fall back into old patterns, expecting everything to magically heal. This wasn't about forgiveness for forgiveness's sake. This was about boundaries. If I was going to try to rebuild any relationships, it had to be on my terms, not theirs. We met in a quiet cafe. It felt neutral, safe. The conversation was awkward at first, both of us fumbling for words, unsure of what to say after everything that had happened. But as the conversation went on, I realized something: this was different. I was different. I listened, really listened. I heard their side, and I shared mine. I explained how much their actions had hurt me, but I also said something I never would have said in the past. I was willing to forgive, but not at the cost of losing myself again. "I'm not asking for you to forget," I said. "I just need respect. If we're going to move forward, we need boundaries." The family member looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw sincerity in their eyes. They agreed to respect my boundaries, to change their behavior. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I left the cafe feeling lighter. Maybe it wouldn't be easy, and maybe the road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, I felt like I was in control of my life. My relationships would no longer define me. I would define them. That night, I sat by my window, the city lights twinkling below. The world felt full of possibilities. For the first time in years, I felt at peace with myself. I called my friend again, this time to share the exciting news about the job offer. We talked about everything, what was to come, what had already passed. "I'm starting over," I said with a smile. "But this time, I'm the one holding the pen." The future was uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to see where it led. The future is uncertain, I thought, but for the first time in years, I'm excited to see where it leads.